German Chancellor Olaf Scholz agreed to supply Ukraine with Leopard 2 battle tanks, according to media reports, after weeks of mounting pressure on Berlin to give Kyiv the heavier weapons it says it needs to drive back invading Russian forces. Germany's decision reportedly came after the United States was said to be poised to start a process that would eventually send dozens of M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine's front lines. Delivery of tanks by the U.S. to Ukraine would be another blatant provocation against Russia, Anatoly Antonov, Russia's ambassador, said. A Swiss parliamentary body proposed waiving a re-export ban that prevents ammunition it manufactures from being re-exported from another country to Ukraine. The U.S. determined that some Chinese companies are providing non-lethal assistance to Russia for use in the Ukraine war, and officials noted their concern to the Chinese government, a source familiar with the matter said. President Volodymyr Zelensky fired some senior officials in Ukraine's biggest political shakeup amid the war, saying he needed to clean up internal problems hurting the country. Ukraine's governing party drew up a bill aiming to boost transparency in defense procurement after an army food contract became the focus of high-profile corruption allegations, according to the parliament's website. President Vladimir Putin said there were shortages of some medicines in Russia and that prices had gone up, despite the production of more of its own drugs. Ukraine's prime minister said his country has enough coal and gas reserves for the remaining months of winter, despite Russian attacks on its energy system. A coalition of NATO member states reportedly will send Ukraine modern main battle tanks. The Wall Street Journal reported on January 24 that U.S. President Joe Biden is preparing to send a significant number of Abrams M1 tanks to Ukraine and that the White House may announce the delivery as soon as January 25. German newspaper Der Spiegel reported on January 24 that German Chancellor Olaf Scholz decided to deliver at least one tank company, 14 tanks, of Leopard 2 main battle tanks to Ukraine in an unspecified time frame. Poland likely will send Ukraine Leopard 2 tanks following Germany's decision. Polish Defense Minister Mariusz Błaszczak stated on January 24 that Poland formally requested Germany grant permission to transfer Poland's Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, and German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock stated that Berlin would not interfere if Poland wanted to send its Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. British officials confirmed on January 16 that the United Kingdom would send Ukraine 14 Challenger 2 tanks to Ukraine. Emmanuel Macron stated he would not rule out the possibility of France sending Ukraine Leclerc tanks on January 22. Russian Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov continued efforts to portray himself and the traditional Russian military command structure as the true defenders of Russia. Gerasimov reiterated on January 23 that Russian President Vladimir Putin approved Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu's plan to develop Russian forces' ability to respond to new threats to the military security of Russia, and Gerasimov accused Ukraine and NATO states of aiming to threaten Russia. Gerasimov invoked the Russian General Staff's historical role in guiding and protecting Russia through several military crises, including the Great Patriotic War, World War II. Gerasimov claimed that modern Russia has never known such a level and intensity of hostilities and heavily implied that the current war in Ukraine presents the greatest threat to Russia since the Great Patriotic War, therefore necessitating the leadership and protection of the Russian General Staff under Gerasimov's leadership. Gerasimov's framing of the war and the General Staff's ongoing revitalization efforts within the historical context of the Great Patriotic War is part of the continued campaign to counter the growing power and influence of Wagner Group financier Yevgeny Prigozhin, Chechen Republic head Ramzan Kadyrov, and their respective paramilitary structures, all of which threaten Gerasimov and the Russian General Staff, as has previously reported. Abrams and Leopard tanks. Why are they important to Ukraine? Kyiv has long called on Western nations to send battle tanks, arguing they are essential for battlefield success. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has agreed to send its Leopard 2 battle tanks to Ukraine. The news comes amid reports that Washington is also poised to send dozens of M1 Abrams tanks to Ukraine's front lines. Like Germany, the United States had been hesitant. While Berlin was concerned about escalating the war, Washington cited logistical and maintenance challenges Ukrainians may face if they were to receive the Abrams. Both armored vehicles are considered state-of-the-art and are more powerful than many Soviet-era tanks fielded by both Russian and Ukrainian forces. The Leopard and American Abrams are actually twins, Sidney Friedberg, contributing editor of the digital magazine Breaking Defense, told Al Jazeera. The Leopard 2 was first produced in 1979 by Krauss-Maffei for the German Ministry of Defense. They are in service with the armies of Austria, Canada, Chile, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Greece, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Singapore, Switzerland, Sweden, Spain, and Turkey. The main difference between the Abrams and Leopards is the engine. The Leopard 2 has a diesel-powered MTU MB873 engine, which is much easier to maintain and more widely used across Europe, while the Abrams uses a more powerful and more complex turbine engine. According to Friedberg, because the Abram tanks are used significantly less across Europe, Ukraine may struggle to cope with logistic infrastructure such as obtaining spare parts, warehousing, and general maintenance. The four-person tank will also require additional training on the complex machinery. Russia's ambassador to the U.S. said the possible delivery of Abrams tanks to Kyiv by Washington would be another blatant provocation against Moscow and that the West would regret its delusion that Ukraine can win on the battlefield. According to Alex Gatapoulos, Al Jazeera's defense analyst, the latest generation main battle tanks are vital for Ukraine if it wants to punch holes in Russian defensive lines and retake territory that Russian forces seized in the opening weeks of the invasion. Southern Ukraine is flat and ideal tank territory. Russia has been building rows of trenches and fortified bunkers to stop a Ukrainian advance in the area. In a Ukrainian offensive, tanks along with troops protected by infantry fighting vehicles like the American Bradley, German Mardar, and even the Russian-made BMP-2 would advance.